The sky of Korath was once full of silver birds, singing machines that carried travelers between shining cities. The deserts glowed at dusk like fields of burning gold, and the people lived in peace. But now everything was grey. The war had stolen the light from the planet. Arya stood alone in the ruins of what used to be her home. She was thin, covered in dust, and her blue skin looked sick and tired. Smoke still rose from broken buildings. The ground was covered in black ash, like snow from a nightmare. Arya's hands shook as she held a cracked photo of her family. The picture showed her husband, tall and proud, holding their young son. Her daughter was smiling and pulling at her mother's sleeve. The memories hit Arya like sharp glass. She closed her eyes, but the tears escaped anyway. Her husband had died in the last battle. He was a soldier, brave and strong, but even the strongest soldiers fell in that terrible war. Arya's children had died 2 days later, when the shelter collapsed. She had tried to save them, screaming their names as she dug through metal and stone. Her voice had become raw, her nails had bled, but the world gave her nothing back. Only silence. Now there was no laughter, no warmth, no family, only empty winds blowing across broken homes. On Korath, life was built around clans. A clan was everything: family, honor, protection, safety. Without a clan, a person was nobody. A widow without children or relatives had no rights, no future, and no dignity. She could not work, she could not join society, and she could not survive mentally. Loneliness was seen as a slow form of death. Arya realized this truth as she stood among the ruins. If she stayed, she would die. Maybe not from hunger, maybe not from a blade, but from something crueler: silence, isolation, and the crushing weight of grief that had no place to go. She whispered softly, "If I stay here, I will break. I will follow my family into the dark." Her voice sounded small against the burnt walls. Korath had once been proud, but after the war, its laws became tighter. Widows were expected to remarry quickly within their clan, or be sent to isolation camps. Arya had no relatives left. No one wanted the burden of a broken woman with haunted eyes. She heard whispers when she walked through the ruined streets. She brings bad luck. She has no clan. She should not be here. Arya kept her eyes down and tried not to cry in public. On Korath, crying in front of others was considered shameful, but she had cried so much that she no longer cared. One night, while sitting alone by the shattered foundation of her home, she looked up at the stars. Many of those stars were not stars at all, they were the lights of orbiting ships. Some of those ships belonged to humans. Humans were strange to the people of Korath. They were emotional and chaotic, but they had also been allies in the last war. They did not believe in clans. They believed in individual choice. Arya found that idea terrifying and fascinating at the same time. A bold idea entered her mind, frightening her even more than war. She could leave Korath. She could go to the human worlds and try to live differently. Maybe they would not care that she was a widow. Maybe they would not care that she was broken. Maybe they would allow her to start again. The idea grew stronger each day as she watched transport ships landing at the spaceport. Finally, Arya gathered the few things she still owned: the cracked photo, a small cooking tool, and her translator device. She wrapped them in a thin cloth and tied it around her waist. Then she stood in the doorway of her ruined home one last time. She touched the burnt wall and whispered to the ghosts of her family, "I cannot stay here. Forgive me." Her legs felt weak as she walked away, but she did not stop. She walked through the dead city, through the silent market, and finally toward the transport station where refugees and travelers waited. Some people stared at her, some whispered, but Arya kept walking. Her heart was broken. Her future was uncertain, and she had nothing left but a tiny hope that somewhere in the galaxy there was still life for her. She did not know that this journey would change everything. She did not know that she would meet a human who would save her in a way she never imagined, but for now, she only walked forward, leaving Ash behind, far across the stars. On a planet called Earth, a human named Daniel lived quietly. He was a mechanic, strong with calloused hands, but soft in heart. He worked with engines, wires, and broken machines, fixing what others could not. His life was simple. He woke up, went to work, ate small meals alone, and went to sleep. Daniel had never married. He had no children. He did not know loneliness in the loud way humans often do. He had chosen solitude. And yet, there was a quiet emptiness in his heart, a space he could not name. His town was small, and its landing field was used by many alien travelers. Humans and aliens traded goods, stories, and sometimes war memories. Daniel often repaired alien ships when their engines failed. He liked the work because machines did not judge, did not ask questions, and always responded to care and attention. One evening, after a long day repairing a freighter's engine, Daniel sat on his porch and rubbed oil from his hands. The sun was low, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples. It was peaceful, almost perfect, when alarms suddenly shattered the calm. Red lights flashed across the landing field, and an emergency siren screamed. A small medical shuttle was coming down, its hull damaged and smoke trailing from its engines. People ran. Workers shouted. Daniel dropped his tools and ran toward the commotion, instinct taking over before thought. When the hatch opened, Daniel saw her. She was thin, weak, and pale, though her skin was blue, a shade he had never seen before on Korath or any other planet. She stumbled out, her legs shaking, eyes wide with fear. She looked like a bird that had survived a storm, trembling but still alive. Daniel felt a strange pull in his chest. It was not fear. It was curiosity. It was something stronger, something like care. The medics moved quickly, but she tried to speak. Words escaped her lips in a strange language, sharp and beautiful, but no one understood. Daniel noticed a small device hanging around her neck. A translator? She seeks refuge, the device finally whispered in human words. Her voice was quiet, cracked, and soft, but it carried desperation. I have no people, no clan. I need help. Daniel stepped closer. He did not know why, but he felt compelled to offer aid. She did not fight. She did not shout. She only looked at him with eyes so wide and empty that his heart ached. The medics carried her inside. Daniel followed silently, watching her every step. She moved slowly, each movement fragile, like a candle in the wind. He noticed her hands trembling, her fingers brushing against the device constantly, as if it were the last piece of life she held. Days passed. Daniel returned to the hospital again and again, fixing machines, helping medics, always watching her from a distance. She was quiet, reserved, and polite, but there was pain in her eyes he could not ignore. She spoke little English, and the translator only partially helped. Yet He could feel what words could not carry: sorrow, loss, and a hope that had almost died. She did not smile. She did not laugh. But Daniel saw her glance at him sometimes, just a brief look, filled with something he could not name. The staff whispered about her story. She had lost everything: husband, children, home, family. She had no rights on her own planet, and laws threatened to send her back to a place where death waited. Daniel did not think about politics. He only thought about her face, the way it seemed too fragile for the harsh universe. He did not understand the rules, but he understood humanity. And in that moment, he realized something. Humans did not turn away from those who needed them. One evening, while repairing a generator outside the hospital, Daniel saw her again. She was sitting in the garden, staring at the sky, hugging her knees. "You look better," he said quietly, unsure if she would answer. She turned to him, her blue face pale, eyes glistening with tears. You are Daniel," she said, her voice trembling. "Yes," he answered. "And you are?" "Arya," she whispered. I need help. I have no one. I do not know what to do." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He did not know her story completely. He did not know the pain she carried. And yet, he knew one thing without thinking. He could not leave her alone. Arya's small voice reached him, barely audible in the night wind. "Please, help me. I have nothing. No family. No home, only hope." Daniel looked at her. His heart, quiet for so many years, made a sound he had almost forgotten. He felt the weight of her words, the desperation and the trust she placed in him without knowing his name. Something inside him stirred, something that would not rest. He nodded slowly. "I will not leave you." Arya's eyes widened. She did not expect this. Perhaps she had never believed anyone would say such words. Her lips quivered, and for the first time in many nights, a small glimmer of relief passed through her gaze. In that moment, two broken lives, one human, one alien, stood together under the soft stars, unaware that their meeting would change both their worlds forever. Days passed slowly, each one heavier than the last. Arya stayed in the hospital under observation. Her body was healing, but her spirit felt fragile, like thin glass ready to shatter. The doctors gave her food, warmth, and a bed, but laws could not give her safety. She had no rights on Earth beyond basic refuge. Korath's rules were strict. A widow with no family had no home, no protection, and would eventually be sent back to a world that wanted her dead. Each morning, she woke with fear clenching her chest. Each night, Daniel visited often. Sometimes he fixed machines. Sometimes he walked beside her quietly, saying nothing. They did not need many words. He could sense her pain, her loneliness, and her small flickers of hope. And she could sense his quiet kindness, the way he never judged her, never turned away. But one morning, Arya realized she could not wait any longer. Time was slipping, and her options were running out. The officials had begun finalizing the papers to send her back. If that happened, she would face the death her planet had designed for the broken. She found Daniel in the hospital garden. The morning sun touched the leaves, but her heart felt like a frozen stone. She sat down beside him, hands trembling, gripping the translator device like a lifeline. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice quivering. I must ask you something." He looked at her, concerned. "Anything, Arya. What is it?" She swallowed hard. staring at her blue hands. Marriage protects a widow. It gives safety, honor, and rights. I have nothing left. No family, no clan, no home, her voice cracked. If I do not find a human to accept me, I will be sent back, and I will die. Daniel's chest tightened. He did not fully understand the rules of Korath, but he understood the meaning. She was asking for life itself. Do not ask for love, Arya continued, her small voice almost breaking into a whisper. I only ask that you marry me. Just a legal bond. Just one human to protect me. If you refuse, I have nothing. Nothing to hold on to. I am already gone. Tears welled in her eyes. For a moment, she looked smaller than he had ever seen anyone, though she was a proud alien of her people. Her body trembled, and he realized she had not been begging for weeks or months. She had been holding her hope in a fragile cage, afraid it would break at any moment. Daniel wanted to reach out. He wanted to say something to take away her fear, but words felt too small. Nothing seemed enough. Arya's eyes locked on his. She did not move. She did not plead further. She had given all she could in that one moment, her hope, her future, her fragile life. Daniel took a deep breath. He remembered his own life, the quiet evenings, the empty apartment, the long nights he had spent alone. He remembered what it felt like to wake up to silence every day, with no one to share a smile or a meal or a story. And he realized he could not allow someone else to face that emptiness. If he could do anything to help Arya, he said softly, voice shaking. You are asking a lot of me. I know, she whispered. I do not even know your heart. I only know I cannot survive without one human. Daniel hesitated. The weight of her words pressed down on him, heavy and real. But he also felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. She was not asking for pity. She was asking for trust. She had no one else. And somehow, without realizing it, she had chosen him. He knelt beside her, reaching for her trembling hands. Arya, if this is what it takes for you to live, I will do it. I will marry you, not because I fully understand it, not because I know love yet, but because you need me, and I will not let you face the world alone. Her eyes widened. She blinked, unable to speak. Her lips trembled. For the first time in many days, she felt a spark of hope, small but bright, truly. She whispered, almost afraid to believe it. Yes, he said, voice steady now. We can figure everything else later. But for now, you are not alone. Arya's chest heaved with emotion. Tears streamed down her blue cheeks. For the first time since the war, since the death of her family, she felt something fragile but real, safety, protection. A human had chosen her in that moment. Daniel did not know that this simple promise would change both their lives forever. He did not know that the quiet mechanic and the broken alien widow were beginning a journey that neither of them had imagined, but that would become something beautiful, something stronger than fear, stronger than loss. And Arya, who had pleaded for mere survival, realized that life could still offer her a chance at something greater. Under the morning sun, two broken lives met in trust, hope, and an unspoken promise. And the first step toward a new life began. The morning after Arya's plea, the hospital felt quieter than usual. Doctors moved slowly. Machines hummed softly. Daniel woke early, his mind restless. He had never imagined that helping someone could weigh so heavily on his heart. He thought about Arya's trembling hands, her wide blue eyes, and the fragile hope she had placed in him by the time he arrived in the garden. Arya was already sitting on a bench, wrapped in a thin blanket. The sunlight touched her skin, but it could not warm the cold sadness still in her eyes. She looked smaller, more vulnerable than he had remembered, and Daniel felt a protective urge he had never known before. "Good morning," he said quietly. His voice sounded strange to him, too soft, too serious. Arya looked up, blinking. "Daniel," she said, "you came. I said I would not leave you," he replied. "And I won't." They sat in silence for a long moment. No translator could convey what hung between them, the fear, the grief, the unknown. Daniel did not need words. He only needed to be near her, to let her know she was not alone. Finally, Arya spoke, voice trembling like a fragile string. If we marry, I can stay here. I will be safe. I can work. I can live." Daniel swallowed. "Marriage is a serious thing. You don't know me. I don't know you. I know enough," Arya said softly. "I know you will not abandon me. That is enough for now." Her honesty struck him. She was not asking for love, not asking for romance, only for life. She was asking him to be her shield in a universe that had destroyed everything she held dear. Daniel took a deep breath and nodded. "Then we do it," he said. The paperwork was simple but surreal. In a quiet office, under the gaze of a government official and a nurse, Daniel and Arya signed documents that made them husband and wife. No flowers, no ceremony, no celebration, just paper and ink. Legal bonds that would protect her from being sent back to Korath. Arya's hands shook as she signed. Daniel noticed and gently covered her hand with his own. It was a small gesture, but it carried warmth. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Always afraid, but less now." The official left. The nurse smiled politely and exited. And for the first time, Daniel and Arya were alone together. Neither spoke for a long while. Arya pressed her hands together and muttered a soft prayer in her language. Daniel watched, unsure how to respond. "What did you say?" he asked finally. "A prayer," she whispered. "For your kindness, for not leaving me." Daniel felt a strange emotion tighten in his chest. He had never expected gratitude like this. It was quiet, deep, and pure. He realized that life had handed him a strange gift, a connection he did not earn, but could not ignore. Days passed after the paperwork. Life remained quiet but changed in small ways. Arya stayed in the guest room of Daniel's modest home. She learned the simple rhythms of Earth life, how to cook, how to clean, how to smile when she wanted to hide sorrow. Daniel taught her practical things and watched silently as she adapted, but the nights were the hardest. Arya often sat by the window, staring at the stars, and hummed songs from her home world, sad melodies that no human could fully understand. Daniel heard them, and he did not intervene. He simply listened, allowing her grief its space. One evening, he spoke quietly. "Arya, you don't have to be alone in your sorrow." She looked at him, blue eyes wide. "On Korath, we do not burden others with pain. It is shameful." "Not here," he said softly. "Here, we do not leave people alone. That is the difference." You are family now. Even if it feels strange, even if it is sudden, you belong. For the first time since the war, Arya felt a warmth that was not from the sun or a blanket. It came from this human who had no obligation, no law forcing him to carry it, chose to do so anyway. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Family." The word sounded foreign, powerful, and fragile all at once. Daniel nodded. "Family," he repeated. "Even if we don't understand each other fully yet, we have that, and it is enough." That night, Arya lay in her new room, thinking about how much had changed in just a few days. She had come to Earth seeking refuge, seeking survival, seeking legal protection. She had found something else, something she did not name yet, but that hummed quietly in her chest. Daniel slept in his own room, but for the first time in years, he did not feel the emptiness pressing on him. He thought of Arya and felt a small, persistent hope. He did not know the future, did not know if love would grow between them, but he knew one thing with certainty. He would not let her face the universe alone, and for Arya, that knowledge, simple, human, unshakable, was the first light in a galaxy that had been dark for too long. Their marriage had begun without ceremony, without kisses, without celebration, but in its quiet, awkward beginning, something far more powerful took root: trust, protection, and the fragile, unspoken bond of two broken souls choosing to face the universe together. Life settled into a quiet rhythm, but it was strange and fragile, like a newly planted seed waiting for sunlight. Arya moved into Daniel's modest home. The rooms were small, plain, and empty, but for her, even for walls with a roof were a gift. She unpacked a few belongings: her translator device, the cracked photo of her family, and a small bundle of clothes. Everything else had been left behind, lost forever on Korath. Daniel showed her how to work the small appliances, how to make food, and how to care for herself in this strange human world. He did not explain much, and Arya did not ask. Words were sometimes heavy, slow, and clumsy, but they understood each other without needing many words. Actions became their language. Morning light streamed into the kitchen as Daniel made tea. Arya washed dishes beside him, moving carefully so as not to break anything. He glanced at her from time to time, noticing the way her blue skin glowed softly in sunlight, the way her hands shook slightly with every motion. He did not speak, only let her feel his presence. The first few nights were harder. Arya lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, hugging a pillow to her chest. Memories of her husband and children haunted her, like shadows dancing across her mind. She hummed songs from her home planet softly, hoping the sound would remind her that she had once known warmth and love. Daniel could hear her through the thin walls. He considered knocking, asking if she wanted company, but he hesitated. He did not want to force himself into her grief. Instead, he stayed awake in his own room, listening quietly, thinking about how fragile life could be, how delicate hope was. One night, he could not remain silent. He opened her door and stepped inside. "Arya," he said softly, "I hear you. You don't have to hide your pain. You don't have to face it alone." Arya turned to him, eyes wide. "We do not burden others with our grief. It is shameful to cry in front of anyone." "Not here," Daniel said gently. "Here, we do not leave family alone, even if it feels strange, even if we are not yet close. We are family. You are not alone anymore." For the first time, Arya felt a warmth in her chest that was not from the heater or the blankets. She had survived a universe that had tried to crush her. She had survived grief and loss that no one should endure. And yet, this human quiet, steady, ordinary chose to be here, simply because she needed him. Days turned into weeks. Arya learned Earth customs, how to use a shower, how to cook simple meals, how to pay for goods in a store. Humans were simple, yet complex, and their small routines fascinated her. Daniel watched quietly, correcting small mistakes with patience, never speaking harshly. One afternoon, while they were sorting cargo in a nearby warehouse, Arya's new job, helping humans and aliens alike, she accidentally dropped a crate. Daniel instinctively caught it before it fell, his hands steady, his face calm. She looked at him, her heart thundering. He had done this countless times with machines, but this time it was her he protected. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," Daniel said, shaking his head. "You would have been fine. I'm just here." But she understood differently. She understood that his presence itself was a shield, stronger than any metal, stronger than any law. He was her protector, not because he had to be, but because he wanted to be. That evening, they sat together on the small porch, watching the sun dip below the hills. Arya's blue skin reflected the last light of day, and Daniel realized how small, yet strong, she had become. They spoke in small words about nothing and everything: Earth, food, alien music, a story from her childhood. It was in these quiet moments that something deeper began to bloom. Trust, care, a bond that was not just legal, not just survival, but something alive, fragile, and beautiful. Arya laughed softly at one of Daniel's awkward jokes, and the sound startled them both. It was light, almost fragile, yet it felt like a promise that the universe could still hold joy. At night, Arya pressed the cracked photo of her family to her chest. She whispered their names, promising herself that she would honor them by living. Daniel sat outside, repairing a generator, but he listened. He had learned that sometimes being present mattered more than saying anything at all. Their home had 2 empty rooms. One belonged to Daniel, filled with the quiet of his life. One belonged to Arya, filled with memories and shadows. But slowly, each room became a little warmer, a little fuller, as they shared the small moments that made life human: a shared meal, a small laugh, a silent promise. And in the quiet of that strange, ordinary home, Arya realized something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Maybe, just maybe, this human was giving her something more than survival. He was giving her life. And Daniel, quiet, patient, and steadfast, realized the same. He was no longer alone either. 2 broken lives, 2 lonely hearts, had begun to fill the empty spaces left by loss. And the universe, vast and cold, had no choice but to notice. Spring came slowly, melting the cold grip of winter and filling the small town with color. Flowers bloomed along the streets, and the sun felt warmer on Daniel's porch. Yet, despite the beauty outside, life inside the house remained quiet, cautious, and still fragile. Arya and Daniel had settled into a rhythm, but both felt the silent weight of the past pressing against them. Arya had begun to smile more often, though softly and hesitantly. She laughed sometimes when Daniel made mistakes with Earth customs, like trying to cook alien-style recipes or spilling soup on the floor. The sound surprised both of them. She had forgotten laughter in the shadow of war, grief, and loss. And Daniel, who had lived quietly for decades, realized that hearing her laugh felt like sunlight breaking through grey clouds. They shared small routines, cooking together, fixing engines, and walking near the river in the evenings. They spoke about little things. Daniel told stories of Earth, of his childhood, of machines he had repaired long ago. Aria told stories of her home world, of her family, and of songs she once sang by fires with her children. Sometimes the translator stumbled, sometimes words failed, but the emotions always passed through anyway, unspoken yet understood. One evening, they sat on the riverbank under the rising stars. The water reflected the sky like a mirror, quiet and endless. Aria held her hands tightly together, looking at the ripples. "Daniel," she whispered, "you have been kind to me, more than anyone else. You did not have to stay. You chose me." Daniel looked at her, unsure what to say. I did not think it was a choice. You needed me, and I could not be here." Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "I asked for safety, just a human to protect me. But you gave me more than that. You gave me hope. You gave me life again." Daniel's chest ached. He realized that she was not speaking of law or contracts anymore. She was speaking from her heart. And suddenly he understood. Their bond had grown into something neither of them had expected. Not just survival, not just duty, something deeper. But fate does not always wait for understanding. The next day, a group of Korath officials arrived on Earth. Their ships were small, swift, and marked with the symbols of authority. They came looking for Aria. She had been reported missing, and the Korath law demanded her return. They did not care that she had survived, that she had been rescued, or that she was now married under Earth law. Aria saw them first. She froze, her heart pounding. Every instinct screamed danger. Memories of the war, her dead husband, and her lost children pressed down on her chest. She turned to Daniel. They will take me back," she whispered. I cannot go. They will kill me, or worse." Daniel stood in front of her, suddenly aware of the full weight of his role. He was not just her friend, not just her protector. He was her husband under Earth law, and that law gave him authority. His hands curled into fists, but his voice was steady and commanding. "She is my wife," he said. "By Earth law, she stays here." The Korath officials hissed, speaking in harsh words that the translator could barely convey. "She is our citizen. She belongs to us." Daniel's eyes blazed. "She is also my family, and I will not allow you to take her." Aria clung to his sleeve, shaking. For a moment, terror and hope collided inside her. She realized that this human, this quiet, ordinary man, was no longer just a protector. He was her shield, her family, her life. The Korath officials paused, evaluating his resolve. Daniel's voice did not waver. His eyes met hers, and silently he said, "I will not let them harm you." Not ever. After a tense moment, the officials withdrew. Aria's chest heaved with relief. Tears streamed down her blue cheeks as she buried her face against Daniel's shoulder. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," Daniel said softly. "We saved each other. You trusted me, and I chose to stay." That night, as they sat quietly in their small home, Aria realized that her heart had begun to change. She had asked for safety, and now she had something more, someone who would stand against the universe for her. She no longer saw him as just a human husband fulfilling a law. She saw him as someone who had touched her life in ways she had not imagined. Someone who had given her a reason to hope, to breathe, and to feel alive again. Daniel, too, felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar yet undeniable. He had never sought love. He had never expected it. But seeing her tear-streaked face, feeling the weight of her trust, and knowing the courage it took for her to survive, awakened something deep in him, in the quiet of their home. Amidst the remnants of grief and the soft light of spring, something shifted. Two broken lives, two hearts scarred by loss, began to grow together, and for the first time, both of them realized this was no longer just survival. This was something bigger, something stronger, something human. The day hearts changed had arrived. Summer arrived slowly, painting the hills with soft green and gold. The days were longer, the air warmer, and life outside seemed alive and full of possibility. Yet inside Donnie,